Hey Amarillo, I'm Jason Boyette, and you're listening to Hey Amarillo, the interview podcast featuring some of the most interesting people and stories of Amarillo, Texas. This episode of Hey Amarillo is supported by StoryBridge, an early childhood literacy program. Kids who grow up in homes with more than 20 books receive an average of 3 years more education compared to those from homes without books. That's an incredible stat. But in the Amarillo area, only 1 in 5 children owns more than 20 books at home. Just 1 in 5. That means a lot of kids are entering school without any kind of foundation for learning to read. So StoryBridge is trying to change that. Since it launched, this nonprofit has distributed more than 650,000 age-appropriate books to local kids. And through the Dolly Parton Imagination Library program, StoryBridge provides a book in the mail every month to 8,500 local children under the age of 5. Now, your donations are required to keep this kind of work going. So I invite you to give to StoryBridge, especially over the next few days when the Panhandle Gives starts. Your money, when you give through that campaign, will be amplified through the Panhandle Gives. So to give or get involved, visit storybridgeama.org. That's storybridgeama.org. Today's guest is Jeff Jarnagin. You might know Jeff from his years and years of performances with Amarillo Little Theater. You might know him as the social media manager for Brick and Elm, and Jeff and I do work together. But that's not why I wanted to have him on the podcast. He has been very public about his health journey over the past decade, and this included testicular cancer and the treatment for that, which led to kidney failure, which led to him getting a kidney transplant. And that story of his transplant is related to a very public and tragic Amarillo story. And so his has been a really complicated journey, but it's a meaningful one, and I wanted to give Jeff an opportunity to talk about it here. Plus, we also discuss his upbringing in Wildorado and his brief stint as an actor in Hollywood when he left Amarillo to pursue his dream there at the age of 40. So there's a lot here. Here's Jeff Jarnagin. Jeff Jarnagin, welcome to the Hey Amarillo podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. I think a lot about your story, but I'm eager to hear you fill in the parts that I don't know. And I want to start with you the same way I start with all my guests, and that's just to ask why you're here. So how did you end up here in the Amarillo area?
Well, I grew up in Wildorado, Texas, which is just about 20 miles west of Amarillo, right there on I-40. You know, Amarillo has been a part of my whole life. My grandparents on my dad's side lived here in Amarillo, and you know, when you live in small town Texas, Amarillo, we'd always say we're going to town.
Okay,
for groceries.
Amarillo was town.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up in Wildorado?
It
was small now, but like, was it different when you were a kid?
Oh,
definitely.
Bit bigger? Okay. It was much smaller.
Okay.
I mean, I remember laying in bed one night and I couldn't sleep, so I started at the end of town and named everybody
that you knew
who lived. I mean, I went from house to house in my mind, naming everybody who lived there. I mean, it was that
Did you
small.
get pretty close, I imagine?
I think pretty much I would nail it.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, I had my bicycle, and that was really all I needed during summer. We had a trampoline too. I spent lots of time on the trampoline. You know, you just kind of have to come up with your own things to do.
Did you have, did you go to school all the way through high school in Wildorado?
Wildorado did not have a high school.
What was the school situation then?
I went K through 6.
Okay, and then what did you do after that?
After that, then you would go to Vega.
Okay.
For junior high and high school.
Got it.
So that's exactly what I did.
Was that weird? I mean,
it was definitely a transition.
You're kind of leaving your community to go to another community.
Well, not just that, but your class size was so much bigger, even though it was still a small number. It was so much bigger. You know, you had lockers instead of just your desk, and it was just a whole new world. I don't think I transitioned very well. You know, at that time, you're kind of going through your awkward period and things like that. And, you know, I think I probably had a rough junior high.
Okay.
In high school, it got a little easier, and I started kind of finding my niche.
Was your family like a farming family or anything? Like why Wildorado?
Yeah. Well, my dad grew up in Wildorado.
Okay. What was your plan after high school? Did you have a sense of what you wanted to do?
I did. I ran into issues with my kidneys when I was going into the 8th grade.
Okay, so that early.
Yeah. And so because of those issues, it automatically pulled me out of athletics, which was not that horrible of a thing to me.
Otherwise, you would have been a football
that's
star.
Probably when junior high started getting better for me. But because I couldn't do athletics, I had a free period, and they didn't know what to do with me, so they just stuck me in the library and basically called a study hall for me. And I was pretty mischievous at that age and would get myself in trouble a lot during that period. And the theater teacher, Mrs. Williams, noticed that. She also taught English.
Okay.
So I was in her English class and all. And I think she saw something in me that I didn't know was there yet. I was a creative child, and, I really liked art and all. But Mrs. Williams kind of took me by the ear and said, "You're mine now during this period. And you're going to read plays. You are going to do set designs for me for these plays. You will cast these plays out of the high school kids, that maybe do one-act plays or don't, just all of this during this one period." And it got to where I loved doing that every day. And so that really got me into acting. And I finally had a place for all of this creativity to go that I didn't know what to do with. And it also helped me figure out more who I was as a person.
Okay. So having that interest and having that ability doesn't always translate into a career as an actor. Did you think, okay, I want to try to see how far I can take this, even as early as graduating from high school? Yeah,
I actually got a theater scholarship. And so I went to Amarillo College, and everything clicked.
Okay.
And this whole new world opened up to me.
Did you graduate from AC?
I did not.
All right.
In fact, at that time, I was always told it's pretty rare that you'll see a theater major actually graduate, because you really have to take a lot of hours during those 2 years if you want to graduate. And that's really hard to do when you're rehearsing at night and,
Let me ask you this. A theater major who wants to find some sort of career in theater doesn't typically stay around this area.
Right.
Did you go into it with that understanding? Were you thinking, okay, I'm gonna leave here at some point?
That was always my plan. I mean, and my theater teacher in high school, she would always just say, "Now, that's not really how it's going to work.
Right.
You're not going to go there and boom, be famous and all." But in my head, I was. And the way things ended up playing out, I transferred to WT from Amarillo College and had gone there for a year. And a position was opening up at the Amarillo Little Theater for a box office assistant, full-time.
Yeah. Pretty close to getting a dependable job within that world, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought. I'm going to school to be a part of theater, and here's this, and it's a part of theater. It's still here, but that's okay. I would be in a theater every day. So I applied for the job. And at that time, they were also doing auditions for Peter Pan. And I had auditioned for Peter Pan, and I found out on the same day that I got cast as Peter Pan and was hired as the new box office manager. So Alan Shankles, I remember clearly that day, told me, "I'm about to make your day, but don't think every day will be like this." Right.
That sounds right. How long did you end up working at ALT?
I was there for 17 years.
Okay.
And then was 40 years old, I think, at that point. I think when I started, I was like 24 or something like that. And I just kind of felt like if you're going to try the Hollywood plan, like you had in your head in high school
Right.
and all, you better do it now before you get too much older.
At age 40,
Yeah.
you thought that.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, I have good genes. Most people think I'm younger than what I am and all. So I at least had that on my side. So in 2013, I did a big farewell show at Amarillo Little Theater.
Because you'd been appearing in plays and musicals all the way through.
While I worked there, I
Yeah.
did many shows, like some even back to back and all. So I've never really written down every show that I've been in, but it has to be over 100 between college and ALT.
So you did a farewell show.
I did this.
You told everybody,
farewell show.
I'm leaving to pursue the dream.
Yeah, I called it The Ego Has Landed.
Okay.
And I went to Alan and I said, what do you think about me being the special event this year and doing a farewell show? I said, I think I could fill up a house for one night and all. So he got on board, the board of directors got on board, and I wrote a show using Broadway songs throughout it. And I had 4 backup singers, and it was just a lot of fun. Yeah. And we did 2 nights, and I almost filled up the second night too.
Okay.
So, but then after that, I went to LA for almost 2 years.
And I want to talk about that because what's interesting to me is that if you have people who are interested in theater, interested in acting, have that creative drive, and they think, okay, I want to give it a go in Hollywood. Like, that's a young man's game. Mm-hmm. That's something that maybe you can pull off in your early or mid 20s because it's hard.
It's hard.
And you waited until you were, on the cusp of midlife. You were at 40. Like, what is it like just psychologically to say, okay, I've lived a full life here in Amarillo, but I've got this dream I haven't pursued. I'm just going to ditch everything I've known and move away.
It was like jumping off a cliff.
Yeah.
My partner, Sean, we've been together for 17 years now. And so we were together during that. And I set out on this on my own, and he stayed here in Amarillo. And that's what made it hard.
Okay. The relational side of it, not the career side of it.
Right,
I guess.
Right. I had family that lived in a suburb of LA.
Okay.
So I was welcomed there, had my own room, lived with them. And it was a culture shock. But it was also a shock because, you think, I've been doing theater for so long, I know how to do this. But television and film is they're totally different beasts from theater. And that's where I realized you've got to figure this out. If you're going to get anywhere, you have to figure this out. Acting is way more subtle than it is on stage. Yeah. And I'm huge for stage.
Yeah, you don't have to project, though, when you're on a sound stage with just a couple of cameras.
No. And you would be surprised how many times they use body mics, too. I still look for them on people and can't see them, but I know they're there because I watched where they put them and, stuff like that. But the whole acting style to me was a shock. And I had been on some auditions, and there was one audition. I really wanted this role. I don't know why. It was a strange short film, very post-apocalyptic themed and all, but I really wanted this role. And it was very similar to a role that I had played on stage. And so I thought, I'll take that character and move it into this character. That way I'll feel more comfortable. And it was the only audition ever that I did where I could see the feedback, what they said about me online.
Okay.
They sent me a link if you wanted to go.
All right.
And I thought, why not?
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it really knocked the wind out of me.
Really?
Yeah. Just how much they went on about how big I was.
That you needed to dial it down.
And all. Yeah. It took me a while. And yes, I did bedroom acting in front of the mirror and all. I was determined. I mean, that's pretty much how I was raised. If you don't know how to do it, you figure it out and you do it.
Yeah.
And also that's the mentality I went into this with. And I practiced and practiced, and I went on an audition. I was playing like one of the president's assistants in this short film, or that's what I was auditioning for, who was crucial to the storyline. And all. And I went in there and I just thought, don't move your face.
Yeah.
Don't make any inflections in your voice. Just do it flat and see what happens. And they called me 2 hours later and said, we want you in this role. When I came out of that audition, I sent Sean a text and I was like, that was the worst audition.
I was the most boring I've ever been.
Ever done. And all. And then, normally you don't find out until the next day or 2 days and all. But yeah, I was home in bed and my phone lit up and I thought, well, answer it. Who knows? And it was them.
And you got cast in that then and completed the project?
Yeah. And in fact, that film got entered into a film festival that was at Warner Brothers Studios. And I was up on a Warner Brothers screen. And that was just totally mind-blowing. In fact, I got there early because you never know with traffic how long it's going to take you in LA. And I was like one of the first people there. And I walked into the back of the theater and they were testing the projector. And it was me that popped up on the screen. And it was up there for like 3 seconds, just this one frame of me. And then it went down and I felt like I couldn't catch a breath. It was just, that was me up there on that huge screen. So that was pretty cool.
Was most of your 2 years there, besides that one, where you actually got the part and you did the filming for that short film, like, was it beyond that just a series of auditions, just over and over auditioning?
Yeah. Fortunately, when I went to LA, I have a friend here in Amarillo, Scott Nall, the drummer, with Insufficient Funds. And he knew a woman that had been in a tour show that came through and did the old dinner theater.
Okay.
And in fact, Chuck Alexander knows her also, and they all became friends while she was here doing that show. And he put me in touch with her because she then lived in LA, and she had opened her own business for actors to do workshops with casting directors. And you have to audition to get in. They decide kind of what level you are in acting and then put you in the appropriate workshops from there. So he put me in touch with her, and I met her at a Starbucks on Ventura Drive one day, and she and I just hit it off immediately. And her son was a teenage filmmaker.
Okay.
That's what he wanted to do. So he started using me in a lot of projects. One in particular he was doing called Reserve Parking, and I was pretty much the star of that. So I started getting a lot of practice with him and seeing myself, having to watch myself and all. And so that kind of gave me a sense of where to dial things down to. Once I got into, it was called Act Now, where we did the workshops. Once I got into that, that was the most beneficial thing.
Okay.
Because you were performing in the class, in front of the class and casting directors.
Okay.
So many times you would even get approached afterwards by the casting director because they had a role that they were trying to fill and you would be great for the role. That was super beneficial. And this woman, her name is Kenna, she pretty much became kind of my manager. And she got me in touch with an agent, and I met with them and they took me on. So now I had an agent and Kenna. So Kenna, really, I would tell her about the auditions that I was going to go on, and she would say, you need to do this and this. And she would help me formulate the plan. I give lots of credit to her.
What was the highlight of your time there? Like professionally?
Well, I went on quite a few auditions, but I still needed steady income.
Mm-hmm.
I went and applied for background acting at a place called Central Casting. And
which a lot of people don't know is actually a place. That's a cliche. This person's right from Central Casting.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes they are.
So I got involved with that. Well, to submit yourself, you have to call this number every day, and they tell you what jobs are available on what show and all. So you would basically submit yourself to one of those or all of them, or, whatever. At that time, Marvel's Agent Carter was just beginning. They had just started shooting that. And so I became pretty much a regular background actor on that.
Okay.
I missed the first 2 episodes, but I got used in all of the others for that season. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Also, period pieces, 1940s. So, you're on the studio lot on these streets that look like real streets with buildings and old cars. And so that was a lot of fun. And I got to meet several famous people. Part of the thing of being a background actor is you're not supposed to approach the stars. Be
cool.
They would approach you if they wanted to talk to you, which rarely happened. I was on Bones, and we were at can't remember which prison it was. It was where Lindsay Lohan was and Paris Hilton. Okay. But we were in a building there at that prison. And part of my background work was being in line to enter and go through the metal detectors and all of that. There was an actor there who was guest starring, and I kept looking at him just going, I feel like I know who that is. And I was like, is it Kirk Cameron? No, it's not Kirk Cameron. And he came over and started talking to me. Just, hey, what's up? How's your day going? Things like that. And started asking me questions about, do I do this background work a lot? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm an actor, and this is basically how I'm learning this craft, is by doing these background projects and all. The conversation ended. He walked away, and this other woman that was there doing background, she walked up to me and she said, you are so lucky. And I said, why? And she goes, you just had a conversation with him. And I said, who is that? I can't place him. And she said, Freddie Prinze Jr. I was like, what? I mean, I hadn't seen him in a while, and he had salt and pepper hair and all.
Married to Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Exactly. So I was like, well, that was pretty cool. And then another show, Alfre Woodard played the president of the United States in it. And we were on this set that looked just like the room that they come in and address all the reporters.
Okay, yeah,
the press room.
Press room.
Yeah. I mean, it looked just like what you see on TV when they're delivering news and taking questions and all from the White House. And Alfre Woodard walked in, and honestly, I have been a fan of hers for a long time. She was in the movie Miss Firecracker Contest with Holly Hunter. And I just thought she was so funny and good in that role that's when I kind of fell in love with her. And she walked in the room and I just thought, oh my God, it's Alfre Woodard. And she came up to the background actors and she came up to me and shook my hand and asked me how I was. And
You said you were there for 2 years. How did you know that it was time to head back home?
I started not feeling well.
Okay. You mentioned your kidneys from childhood.
Right. I thought at the time, maybe I am too old to be doing this.
Maybe you're just getting exhausted.
Because,
by the work.
some of the call times, especially for Agent Carter, were like 4 a.m. and all. And that's tough.
Yeah.
And then you work 8 to 12 hours that day and do it again the next day. And all. It's hard. So I kind of thought maybe things like that were coming into play. But then I started getting some physical, noticeable things, bumps and swellings. And in the back of my mind, I knew what it was, but for some reason I told myself if I don't acknowledge it, it'll go away.
Yeah.
And it didn't. And I finally got to a point where I just thought, I need to go home. I think there's something really wrong with me, and I need to be home to address it.
Okay.
So I went home, and did I address it? Nope.
You did not.
I did not. I just ignored it and tried to keep going. I was being told a lot how skinny I was, but I didn't feel that. I felt like I was big and puffy.
Mm-hmm. That's LA for you, though, right?
Yeah. Everybody else was noticing. I went for, I think it was 6 months after I got home from LA. And then I had even kept it a secret from Sean.
Wow.
Yeah. But it just finally got to a point I was vomiting a lot. Other things were going on, and it was really taking its toll on me. I couldn't go upstairs without losing my breath, and I would literally have to sit down for 5 to 10 minutes after I did that. In fact, one time I saw somebody post, it was like the 12 signs of cancer, and I had 9 of those signs. Wow. By the time I finally went in. And so I made a doctor's appointment with my urologist, Dr. Kibbe. In fact, he was my urologist for most of my life because I had some other issues going on too when I was a kid. I went in to see him, and he took one look at me and said, "You have cancer." I know.
Just from looking at
I know you have cancer.
Like that's pre-exam, pre-testing,
right.
Anything like that.
Right. And what we were looking at for him to say that, and I hope your listeners are okay with this, because I feel like when I tell this story, I have to be transparent, just because if someone else hears it and is going through something similar, maybe they'll take something from it.
Yeah.
So, we're dealing with sensitive subjects like my testicles.
Yeah.
My right testicle had swollen to about the size of a baseball.
Wow.
And I had another lump on the right side of my pubic bone area. It kind of looked like a golf ball or a ping pong ball under the skin, humped up. So went to Dr. Kibbe. He told me, "You're leaving here and going to the hospital." And I said, "Can I run home and pack first?" And he said, "Sure, just make it fast." And so I ran home, and I had a catheter in me and was carrying a bag with me, ran home, packed, Sean came home. I told Sean the night before. That was the first time I told him about any of this. I just kept it hidden. And so I told him the night before, I said, I'm going to Dr. Kibbe tomorrow, and he's going to tell me I have cancer, and I'm going into the hospital.
Like you knew that the night before?
I knew it.
That was how you saw it playing out?
I knew it. And went to Dr. Kibbe, and he said, you have cancer. You're going to the hospital right now.
Okay, so people who know you, people who have followed you on social media know that you were pretty transparent about the years that followed, about your cancer journey,
right?
How that led to a series of other health issues. Obviously, you're here today, so that's good.
Right.
Broad strokes, like walk me through kind of the progression of things to where we are now.
To where we are now. Okay, so I ended up having stage 3 testicular cancer. It had spread to my lymph nodes, and they were afraid that was going to come back as lymphoma.
Right.
And that's really bad news. And so I went into surgery. Dr. Kibbe wanted to totally remove the right testicle. And they also, the other bump that I referred to next to my pelvic bone, they did a biopsy of, because that was a tumor that was on a lymph node right there. And when they scanned me, the left side of my body, they said looked like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, it just lit up.
It just lit up. It was all my lymph nodes on that side. And I had one bulging out of my neck, like a marble size. But anyway, go through surgery. He removes the testicle. I am in the recovery room, and Dr. Kibbe wakes me up as much as he can. I remember it, but it is so cloudy. It looked like he was in fog. And all he said to me was, no lymphoma. I remember thinking, thank God. Yeah. And then went back to sleep.
Okay.
So I ended up doing 4 rounds of radiation and 38 rounds of chemo in the course of 3 months. And at the same time, I had also been put on dialysis because my kidneys were weak going into this. And when my body pretty much started trying to shut down, it took out the rest of my kidneys. So the cancer and all of that just really knocked my kidneys down.
Did you know going into it that was a potential side effect?
Yes.
Kidney damage?
I could just already tell. So, of course, I did chemo, and they started me on dialysis 3 times a week. I think when I first started, it was like 4 hours at a time. So 3 months' time, got rid of the cancer. That then left me with the kidney issues, end-stage kidney failure. So,
what year was that? Like, when did you finish up the cancer treatment and start?
All of that took place in February of 2016.
And then you were in acute kidney failure, I guess.
Yeah.
For how many years?
Almost 8.
Okay.
I went to dialysis every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I had to be there at 6:30. I'd get home at 11.
For years you did that?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you go on to dialysis, there's also a diet that you have to follow because, too much potassium could send me into heart failure, all kinds of things. Phosphorus, you have to watch out for. I didn't even know what phosphorus was. And basically it's in everything as a preservative and all. But, I couldn't have potatoes, avocados, all the O's.
Cheerios.
Yeah.
Oreos.
So you're in this room during dialysis, and there are like 20 other people there, and you just line the outer edges of the room in your recliner that has a heater and a massager, and each one of us had a television and all. But you watch other people and see the problems that they're going through because they're not being compliant. And I thought, if you're After I had cancer, they told me I could not go on the waiting list for a kidney transplant for 5 years.
Okay.
Because in case the cancer came back. So that was a hard blow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought you need to be compliant with everything they're telling you so that when you do finally go on the list, you'll be in the best condition you can be in. And so that's what I did. But anyway, I just became compliant, and I learned the lingo. I learned the dialysis machine itself. So I could look at the numbers kind of and see, are they taking off the right amount of fluid? Things like that. Even they would tell me at the clinic, even my kidney doctor, my nephrologist, Dr. Hendrick, would tell me I was the most compliant patient they had ever seen.
You were a good patient.
I tried. I really tried. I wanted this to happen, and I wanted it to happen fast. Being told you're going to have to do this for 5 years, it's hard to comprehend.
Yeah. So you went through that entire process knowing you had to wait so many years before you were even eligible. So how did you get through that? Besides being a really good patient, paying attention to stuff, like what got you through? When
I first went into the hospital with cancer and kidney failure, I just cried for the first week I was there. I thought I was going to die. Nobody would give me a straight answer. One day, all of my team was around my bed, and they were all just talking about me right above me and all. And I just laid there crying. And Dr. Kibbe was there, and he was kind of up towards the head of my bed, and he looked over at me and he said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Because I'm going to die." And he said, "You are going to die with this attitude." He said, "I've seen it happen. You're willing yourself to die right now. You need to fight. You need to figure out a way to fight this." And that was just a total eye-opener for me. And I remember Sean was on the other side of me, and I looked over to him and I said, "I've got to make this funny." And it was a lot of dark humor at first and all, but that making fun of it was a way for me to beat it up.
Okay.
Basically, and take control. And I think that really helped my recovery. And I kept that going all through dialysis too.
Now, my understanding is that you did end up on the kidney transplant list.
Right.
You received a transplant.
Right.
It did not go well.
Right.
Without going into the gory details of that, tell me what happened there.
I went to Fort Worth to Baylor, Scott and White, got the first transplant. Next couple of days in the hospital, everything was fine. They released me. We still had to stay in Fort Worth, so we were at an Airbnb. And we left the hospital. We stopped to have lunch because I could eat anything that I wanted.
You just went crazy on phosphorus, right?
And I think we went and had barbecue with mashed potatoes and, all that good stuff and all. Then we went to the Airbnb, went to bed that night. About 4 a.m, I woke up and I could tell I had a fever. And it gets a little gory after that when I went to the bathroom. But yeah, they ended up having to rush me to the hospital.
Okay.
I was in so much pain. I was blacking out. I really felt like I was about to die.
Your body was rejecting that new kidney.
Well, it wasn't rejecting it. It had fallen apart inside my body. So I had internal bleeding. And the doctor told me before I went into surgery, she said, "I'm going to try my hardest to keep this kidney, but there is a chance you're going to wake up and be back on dialysis." And at that point, I just said, "You do whatever you have to do to save my life." And
what was the result?
They took the kidney out.
Okay. You were on dialysis again then for how many? How long?
7 or 8 months.
Okay.
And I was at dialysis and got a phone call from this woman that I knew through the theater Tanya Denton. She was on the board of directors at at ALT when I worked there, and she was at the hospital with all of her family because her great niece Emerson was there, and they were about to say goodbye to her.
Yeah.
And the family had read my story on Facebook and had decided that they were going to make a direct donation to me.
They named you.
Mm-hmm.
They said, we want.
Yes.
And if people remember, Emerson's story was just an incredible tragedy involving an allergic reaction that happened in an Amarillo school. That story was all over the news, but you ended up with a piece of her.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really, I always refer to it as my double-edged sword, because a little 10-year-old girl was no longer on this planet, yet I got a part of her that allows me to stay.
Yeah.
There is a depression that comes with an organ donation.
Kind of a survivor's guilt sort
yes,
of situation.
that's exactly what it's called. That's exactly what it's called. And I was dealing with that a lot after I wrote a post and put it on Facebook and took a selfie of me laying on the gurney. They were about to take me to surgery. And on the post, I said, Emerson, I didn't know your sweet little soul, but it will forever be a part of mine now. And when I woke up and got back to the room, Sean said, are you in the mood to look at your phone and go to Facebook? I was like, sure. And he said, because I think you really need to look at your post. And I got on there and went to my post, and it had totally gone viral.
Yeah.
At that point, I think it had been shared like 1,000 times, and it just kept going. And that really helped me in a way to come to terms with it and to kind of go, I need to be a better me with this. I need to take time and enjoy life. I need to tell people my story. And so that's basically what I started doing from that point on. I mean, I had made lots of posts and all about it before.
But it's not necessarily you're doing it out of guilt now.
Right.
It's
I
that
kind of
inspiration
could funnel that guilt into maybe helping somebody else. Even if it was just one little part of my journey that they could associate with.
The last question I want to ask is, how central has Amarillo been, this community, to that story, to your story?
Oh, for a good year following the transplant, basically, if I went out in public, somebody would come up to me and say, are you the guy that got Emerson's kidney? And they would say, can I hug you? Complete strangers. And that really helped me. It embarrassed me and all, but it really kind of made me go, wow, people are getting something from my story.
You still live in the city where her family lives.
Mm-hmm.
Is that to me, that feels rare. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of transplants, somebody who lived in Dallas and then the kidney goes to Arizona or whatever.
Right.
Like you're still in the same community as the people who experienced that tragedy, which has given you life.
Right.
Tell me what that's like.
Emerson's mom and I, it was a few months after the transplant, we kind of started an email relationship. And she was really grieving. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. We emailed each other, never really talked on the phone, anything like that. Just email. And I brought up maybe we should meet. Maybe it's time for us to meet. So last Christmas, it was the day after Christmas, I went to Emerson's mom's house and we met, and Emerson's grandma was there too. Sean was with me. And there was just this peace that I think both Chelsea, Emerson's mom, and I felt between one another. And that was confirmed later when Chelsea made a post about it felt like Emerson came home that day. And it was really cool because I got to go in Emerson's bedroom and into her closet and all. And I just felt like I got to know Emerson that day because so many people had told me she was just this amazing kid and all, but I never got to experience that.
Right.
I mean, I think she's amazing because she's keeping me alive, but I never got to know her other than, the news stories and all that came on leading up to her death. So it was just really, really cool, and it felt right. And to this day, she and I keep in touch. I just did a play at ALT. She came and saw it. So, I mean, we have these where we're out and about and run into each other now. So it's just weird how life works.
This week's episode is supported by SKP Creative, and the team there asked me to talk about the Amarillo Tribune. If you haven't heard, this is a new local nonprofit journalism project where I'm a founding board member. The Amarillo Tribune is Amarillo's first community-supported digital-only news organization, providing free public service journalism about Amarillo and this area. Jackie Kingston is the CEO and executive editor, and she's built up a really strong news team for this daily publication. They're providing coverage about issues we care about, including the city government. And as a nonprofit, the Amarillo Tribune is participating in the Panhandle Gives. That's November 25th to December 3rd. And if you appreciate its work, SKP encourages you to support it during the campaign. Your gifts will be amplified when you donate to the Tribune through the panhandlegives.org. So learn more by visiting amarillotribune.org. That's the amarillotribune.org, and thanks to SKP Creative for the support. Okay, I'm back with Jeff Jarnagin. Jeff, this is the part of the show I call 8 Straight. 8 Straight is sponsored every week by Panhandle Plains Historical Museum in Canyon. It's the largest history museum in Texas, and its collection includes a lot of resources for local educators, including the STEAM Lab, which gives kids hands-on learning opportunities in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Now, that didn't exist when I was in school, but I remember how much I loved field trips to the museum.
Yeah.
It's a great resource. You can learn more at panhandleplains.org. Okay, when you think of this area 10 years from now, what do you hope for?
I love the fact that both Amarillo and Canyon are expanding and getting bigger, but I really hope that neither of the two places loses their charm.
Okay.
I love seeing the old buildings that were once abandoned being used again.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Other than wind, what does this area have too much of?
For me, allergies.
Okay. But those don't impact your kidneys, though, right?
No,
so
they don't.
There's no issue there.
I can take as much Benadryl as I need.
All right. I don't think anybody would argue with that. And
Yeah.
if it's not something happening in the spring, then it's like new stuff in the fall. That
I know.
messes people up. Like it's
I used to
every season.
I used to feel better when it would rain. And now there's something about the rain that sets me off. I'm just like,
Okay, what does this area not have enough of?
neurologists.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's come up before, actually, on this podcast.
I think there's only one here, and the waiting list is huge. My dad, I had to take him to Lubbock. He had Alzheimer's, and we had to go to Lubbock to see a neurologist.
Yeah, I'm always surprised at the number of specialists that we do have, but it feels like that's this gaping hole,
Right.
in the medical community. And I know people are talking about it, smarter people than me. So hopefully we're in the process of solving it, but
Yeah.
I agree. What's your favorite local neighborhood?
The neighborhoods around like Amarillo College, like the Eckel, Plemons neighborhoods, only because I lived in those neighborhoods when I was going to college, little apartments, things like that. Still have the brick streets and all, but I really loved some of the large houses that you could tell were from the 20s and 30s and all. And it just, those kind of things, I love seeing those kinds of things.
Yeah,
I want to go in those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's still one of my favorite places.
I don't think
just
they
to
would approve.
Walk around, look at stuff, look at the houses. What's your favorite local restaurant?
OHMS.
Okay.
We're talking fast food. Taco Villa.
All right. Well, that's a solid Amarillo answer. Nobody would argue with you there. What's your favorite local mural?
Right now, it is Drew Merritt's latest mural that he did during Hoodoo Festival.
Yeah, so the new one that he did.
Yeah, of the Cowboys over on, is that Tyler?
Yeah, I think so.
On Tyler. I don't collect Western art or anything like that. I can appreciate it when it's good and all, but there was just something. I went out there every day with my job.
Sure.
And I just started kind of documenting his progress every day. And I would talk to him about it. And I just kind of fell in love with that mural, watching it develop. And the fact that he was doing it all with spray paint was just, it blows my mind. All of those artists blow my mind. But that's a big mural he did.
It's big. What I like about that one is that he left some of the exposed bricks.
That's exactly what I was going to say too. Yeah. And it totally looks like Amarillo sky.
Right. He's got this sunset, this sort of gradients into it, but then you've got the bricks. It's really unique. What's your favorite local nonprofit?
Well, of course it would be Amarillo Little Theater.
Okay.
I've just given too much blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. You've been on the payroll, but you've volunteered a lot of hours.
Well, even when I came back from LA, I went back to work there. I worked there for 20 years.
The most recent Arsenic and Old Lace was sort of your return to the stage after all your health stuff. Like, are you back in now? Like,
I think so. There were lots of things that I was worried about because I didn't know if I could still remember lines.
Yeah. Did you have stamina to do it?
I've got so much brain fog from chemo and dialysis and all. But yeah, I did it. And it turned out to be a much more physical role. And I did it. And everyone around me took such good care of me, especially during the physicality. The guy I played opposite with, Zach, he was just always asking me, "Are you all right?"
Yeah. I have to stuff you in this bench. Are you okay?
Yeah. So, by the end of the show, I was pretty worn out, running up and down the stairs, carrying dead bodies, things like that. But I did it.
Okay, last question. When was the last time you visited the Big Texan?
Oh, my gosh. 1992.
Okay, that long ago?
Yeah.
All right.
We had our theater banquet from Amarillo College.
I was going to say, were you in college at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might look a little bit different, but then it might feel real familiar if you were to go back. So,
yeah.
A lot of things change, but it still maintains that same sort of vibe, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, that concludes the 8 straight questions. I like to close by asking my guests to endorse something. So what's one thing you would like listeners to know about or to experience?
Just with everything that I've been through, I really like having my own time. You can call it meditation, whatever you want to call it. I like to do that at least once a day.
Okay.
And I've been going to Arts in the Sunset a lot more with work and all. And it's one place that I can go to and still have that time for me just by looking at art. They have so much to look at. And of course, our favorite pieces of art are the ones that call out to us.
Right.
And all. But I love getting lost in a piece of art. One that you just can connect with and feel like you step inside of and all. And that happens to me quite a bit at Arts in the Sunset.
Well, and it continues to change too.
Right.
There's new exhibits.
Exactly.
There's new things happening, new shows.
One of my favorite places, Blind Bird.
Yeah.
Glass blowing. I love that place. In fact, if you're looking for Christmas gifts, go there.
Yeah. Very talented there. Okay. I concur with Arts in the Sunset. That's one of my favorite places in Amarillo.
Mm-hmm.
And I've loved seeing it progress in the most recent years. Okay. Jeff Jarnagin, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
And that concludes the episode. I want to say thanks to Jeff for the interview. Before Jeff was part of the Brick and Elm team, we published a story about his cancer and transplant journey. So you can read about that at brickandelm.com. Just search for his name. I've also linked to it in the show notes. Thanks also to Storybridge, SKP Creative, the Amarillo Tribune, and Panhandle Plains Historical Museum for supporting this podcast, and to Angelina Marie for editing every week. Thank you for listening. Hey Amarillo exists on a weekly basis because of listeners like you and the local people who support it financially through patreon.com/Hey Amarillo. Hey Amarillo's executive producers include Patrick Burns, Jason Bird, Katie Linger, Corey Burns, Josh Wood, Wes Reeves, Cindy Graham, and Barbara and Jim Witten. This has been episode 379. My name is Jason Boyette, and I'll see you next week.